Well, I'm available to start at right tackle.
You can't see when I have clothes on.
All right. Well, there's not an even playing field. There's never been an even playing field. There never will be an even playing field.
What shampoo do you use on your hair?
You don't need to be Superman to play in this offense.
You're listening to The Red Zone.
Welcome, Badgers fans, to another episode of The Red Zone. Coming up on the podcast, we're going to talk to our columnist here at the State Journal, Tom Oates. We're going to touch on Axe Week and what the Minnesota game means to the Badgers, and we're also going to, of course, hit on Jonathan Taylor and his heroics against Purdue and kind of the crazy comeback that was that game in West Lafayette last week. We're also going to talk to Deron Harrell about his progress at corner, the couple huge plays he made near the end of the Purdue game, and kind of looking forward to Axe Week as well with him. But let's get to our interview with Tom. We're now joined by Tom Oates, our columnist here at the State Journal. How you doing, Tom?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
It's a little weird to call you Tom. I always call you Oatesy. But...
Pretty much everybody does now. I don't know if I answered anything else, but...
Well, we're coming off this crazy game against Purdue in West Lafayette, triple overtime, first triple overtime game for Wisconsin they've ever had. What are kind of your thoughts? I mean, I know going into this game, it was a game that you could look at and say this is kind of a meaningless game. You know, they're already bowl eligible, can't win the West. But do you think it was still a big win in terms of just sort of actually having a high point in an otherwise disappointing season and of course helping their bowl prospects as well?
Well, I think it can be an uplifting turning point kind of game too, because what you saw was some of the things that haven't been there in the past. Good quarterback play in the clutch, coming back in the fourth quarter of a lot of their road losses. They've been in the game in or about going into the fourth quarter or early in the fourth quarter, and then they just kind of lost it and would lose by double digits in those three road losses in particular. And they turned that around. They played a very gritty football game, I thought, after they fell behind by 14 points. They did what they had to do on defense. They were terrific offensively. 2 touchdown drives in the late in the fourth quarter, and then obviously the 3 overtime periods when I think they only had 7 plays and scored 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
They were pretty much unstoppable, and I just thought there was a combination there of grit, late game grit, and a balanced offense that we hadn't seen. So we've been looking for it all year, but we hadn't seen it, and now we've seen it. And I mean, it could be that kind of a game, I think, that maybe changes the outlook of this team and the attitude.
You mentioned the clutch quarterback play. What were your thoughts on Coan's performance? Because I know he's also obviously coming off a really bad game at Penn State. Did you see major strides from one game to the next? I know there's a lot of other people make play. I mean, Danny Davis, some of the catches he made, a lot of people. He got a little more help in this game, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But do you feel like he made some major strides this week?
Well, I think both their quarterbacks have been lacking for help so far this year. Fumagalli was a huge target last year who made plays outside of his catch radius. I think Quintez Cephas was that kind of player, and I think Danny Davis was that kind of player. And I guess I think Danny missed the first 2 games. He was suspended, and it took him so long to get back on track and get involved. And part of that had to do with the quarterback play, I think. But all of a sudden now you see the kind of catches you expect out of Danny, and that's the kind of catches you need out of players. You need 1 or 2 of those guys on your team that sometimes you just throw the ball up and let somebody go get it, and the quarterback gets some help. So I certainly think there were a lot of things that went into it. There were some things that I've always liked about Jack Coan since the first time I saw him on the practice field. I've liked his. I think he's got pretty good feet. I think he's got a quick release. I think he's got a real good arm. I'm not sure why a kid gets thrown in the middle of his redshirt freshman season and everyone expects him to be Aaron Rodgers right away. Well, he wasn't, and he's still not Aaron Rodgers, and he's not going to be Aaron Rodgers. But he certainly showed some strides, and I thought he made some clutch throws down the stretch. He seemed more in control, more aware of what he's doing, and in my mind, less afraid to throw the ball down the field and make something happen. Throw the ball up to Danny Davis and let him come down with it. Throw it up to Taylor and A.J. Taylor and let him come down with it. It seemed like he was timid before for most of his first 2 or 3 games, just not cutting it loose, didn't have the confidence to cut it loose. And at some point in this game, I think he did develop some confidence. Hey, I can throw the ball then, and I think he did. And you saw the results. He hit his last 7 passes. Does that mean he's not going to go 0 for 7 out of the gate? No. Every quarterback's a work in progress. And I think people need to understand that. But there's some innate talent with Jack Coan, and that is definitely there. And if people are patient, it might come out. And I think the game against Purdue was a sign that it might come out. I don't know that everybody was saying that a week ago.
You're just not going to always see consistency with young quarterbacks. That's just not typically going to happen.
You don't see consistency in the NFL with old quarterbacks.
I think Aaron Rodgers sort of spoils these Wisconsin fans sometimes.
There's no question. I think Wisconsin quarterbacks have suffered for 25 or 6 years with the comparisons with the quarterback in Green Bay, because they've had back-to-back Hall of Fame quarterbacks that both of whom could do miraculous things, running around with their feet and making plays and making these impossible throws, and 2 of the strongest arms in the history of the NFL. And I just think Badger quarterbacks have all kind of suffered, not from a comparison, because there's no comparison, but just the expectations of the position. They've suffered from that. And it's different. These are college kids. These aren't, even the great college quarterbacks, struggle at times with some of the complexity of the position, because as complex as the position has become in the NFL, it certainly has become complex in college as well. There's a lot on these guys' plate.
And it seems like Jonathan Taylor had kind of slipped away a little bit from the Heisman race. These past couple weeks, just with Wisconsin sort of falling out of the rankings and everything. But I think after a performance like this, do we need to look at him as a serious candidate? Should everybody else be looking at him as someone who should be a real candidate to win this thing, or is it just sort of the way this award happens? Is it just a little unrealistic for a running back on an 8-4 team to actually go out and win this thing?
Let me put it this way: he should be a candidate for the Heisman Trophy. He's the best running back in the country. He's the most productive running back in the country. He passes the eye test. He looks good running he makes great plays, which a running back has to do. This isn't just a career achievement award. He makes great plays in between all these yards, in addition to all the yards he's gaining, and he's carried this team. Now, here's the problem let's talk realistically. The Heisman has become a quarterback award, and it's become a the quarterback from a top 10 team award. Yeah. And he is neither. Wisconsin's 4 losses have really pushed it out of the kind of the national spotlight, and that will certainly hurt him in a realistic sense at getting the Heisman Trophy. And there are some good quarterbacks around the country who are doing really well. Oklahoma, Washington State, Ohio State. I just think there's been some outstanding quarterback play, and it wouldn't surprise me in the least that the players that go to New York for the Heisman ceremony are all quarterbacks. That would not surprise me in the least. And now if it was just running backs, I don't think there's any question who'd win the award.
I think he's pretty much locked up the Doak Walker Award at this point.
I would certainly hope so. Let's put it that way. I would hope so.
Defensively, it was a very up and down game. Obviously they gave up a lot of big plays against Purdue, but they really came through a couple times when they really needed to. A couple times on the goal line, holding on to field goals. But from a secondary perspective, they got really tested. What are kind of your thoughts on these young defensive backs, especially the young corners? Because I feel like they have went through a run of playing pretty well since the Nebraska game to now. But then of course they go out here against this Purdue team and get a little bit shredded at times against a team that's pretty pass happy and will take shots down the field. But do you like sort of the potential these young corners have from what you've seen this season?
Yeah, I thought they were going to get a really good test against Penn State, and I don't know that really materialized. And you knew this was going to be a terrific test because Purdue throws the ball. They throw it long. They throw it short. They have Rondale Moore is, one of those guys that, you're starting to see now in the NFL. The guy from Kansas City, the guy the Bears have, Coan. These little quick guys where you throw it and then see if they can make yards. And you throw a 2-yard pass and you end up with 12. And, there were a lot of missed tackles. And there was a cat and mouse game, I think, between Jeff Brom and Jim Leonard over were they going to play press coverage? Were they going to back off? Were they, and I think Jim Leonard tried to change it up as much as he could and be unpredictable because that's really all you can do. It was let's just say it was a learning experience, but you knew that they were going to get tested, and you knew Purdue was going to gain yards through the air. Was it as good as you would hope? Not really, but just think of that secondary and what it's all gone through this year in terms of being inexperienced and then getting hurt, and guys getting hurt, and then having more inexperienced players in there, and constant juggling due to injury or inexperience, and it's been a really challenging year for the secondary here, and I like you say, at that point in a game like Purdue, you try and get a few stops. That's more important than holding them to 150 yards passing, for instance.
Yeah.
They're going to get passing yards. You just want to get some stops, and Wisconsin got enough stops to win the football game.
And man, I feel like if Andrew Van Ginkel had been healthy this entire year, we could have seen a much different season from him.
Oh, he's a playmaker. I mean, and his hustle running downfield to force that fumble. Yeah. 30, 40 yards downfield, that's phenomenal. And it shows his athleticism, but it also shows, how hard he's playing and what kind of a mental attitude it takes to. It's so easy if you're in the front seven to turn around and say, okay, he's gone. Well, no, he didn't say that. He kept running and caught up to the play and made a great play. So, but he's just a natural playmaker. He's a natural pass rusher. He's also has tremendous ability, I think, to drop into coverage and move and run people down. And so he had a terrific game. I think you've seen since the ankle injury, since he returned from the ankle injury, that he's just gotten better and better and better every game. And I assume that's because he's getting healthier and healthier every game. And what we're seeing now is the Andrew Van Ginkel we expected to see, which was a terrific playmaker, and he's become that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would have given up on that play.
No question. And that's just not a guy that's 6'4" and runs a pretty good. And I assume he's going to run a pretty good 40 when he does run one.
Well. Yeah.
That's way more. That's way more than just athletic ability there. That shows a lot about how a guy approaches a game, and that he didn't give up, wasn't discouraged, continued and ran down the play, and ended up making a huge play.
Well, we've made it to Axe Week here. I know you've been around long enough to see Minnesota win this game, but I don't think these players have. Do you think it's a little bit more difficult for these guys when the streak has gone this long to? I know a lot of fans view this as they're going to beat Minnesota. They always beat Minnesota. But, I mean, is it kind of hard, you think, for these guys when they've won, 14 straight, to go out there and believe that they can lose the game if they're not, on their game, I guess? My
thoughts are, I don't know that the Heartland Trophy and the Freedom Trophy have caught on either outside that locker room or maybe even inside that locker room. But the Axe has.
Yeah.
And I just don't think – I think there's so much emphasis put on getting it, keeping it, all the above, that it will always be important and will always serve as a huge motivating factor. And I think when you listen to these guys talk about it, it's they keep it in that locker room and they want to keep it in that locker room. And I think that's really important. It's important to all these guys. much more so than any other rivalry. I just think it's really big.
Do you think Minnesota has any chance in this game? I mean, obviously it doesn't seem like they do. I mean, they were 2-6 in the conference, but this Wisconsin team, if they hadn't come back against Purdue, I think we'd be looking at this game maybe a little bit differently.
Oh, I haven't changed. That hasn't changed my opinion. I think both teams will come into this game motivated. I think Wisconsin's the better team. Wisconsin's at home. I think Wisconsin will win. But I think, hey, the Minnesota kids, just because they haven't seen the Axe doesn't mean they don't want it. And so they're going to show up ready to play. Plus, they need to be a win to be bowl eligible. Clearly, they're not as good a team as Wisconsin is, but that doesn't. I think Wisconsin's a better team than Purdue, and that went down. They had to rally to win that one. So, a little more parity in the Big Ten this year. The good teams aren't as good, and the bad teams aren't as bad, and so I don't know how you can say that it won't be a pretty good game, highly motivated, with highly motivated players on both sides. I just think Wisconsin's a better team, and it's at home.
Where do you think they're going to end up bowling this year? I mean, if it's they got a boost from Michigan State's loss probably helped them out. Obviously, coming back against Purdue, it seems like they have a lot better chance of getting to one of those more high quality bowls after this last week.
Yeah, I think so. I think it would depend if Iowa would lose. Some of their status would depend if Iowa would lose. Some of their status will depend if both Ohio State and Michigan get into the New Year's Six Bowl. So there's 12 teams there. If the Big Ten gets 2 teams in there, and they would be Ohio State and Michigan, then all of a sudden everybody bumps up a notch maybe. If Iowa would lose and Wisconsin would win, then Wisconsin might jump over them. So I certainly think the Holiday Bowl's in play. I certainly think the next bowl behind that is the Gator Bowl, Music City Bowl, either or excuse me, that's just an or, not an either. It's going to, one of those 2 bowls is going to get a Big Ten team, and it's going to be next after the Holiday Bowl. And I was told in West Lafayette that the Music City Bowl has first dibs on teams this year to face on which team they want to face the SEC. Now, does that mean Wisconsin's the apple of their eye? I don't think we can say that, but I think that's a possibility. So I would suggest it would be the Holiday Bowl or the Music City Bowl, assuming Wisconsin wins.
Do you think the Holiday Bowl would take them again twice in 4 years? Is that?
Well, people, if you look at the history of UW playing out west, there's a lot of Wisconsinites out there, and they show up for games, and it's not just all travel from here to there. Wisconsin travels well. I don't think Wisconsin will travel particularly well this year because I think it's been that kind of a disappointing season and has left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths, just based on expectations. But there's still, when you play in Southern California, there's a lot of Wisconsin people that come out of the woodwork to that game. So I think Wisconsin's still attractive in that sense. And they have the best running back in the country, and I think they're pretty attractive in that sense. So, those rules aren't hard and fast. Those rules were designed to prevent Penn State from playing in the Outback Bowl 3 years in a row, that kind of thing, as opposed to because they're next in the pecking order, and the pecking order is hard and fast, the Holiday Bowl has preferences, but they can certainly go against those preferences if the team they think the most attractive team is Wisconsin. So I wouldn't eliminate Wisconsin from the Holiday Bowl just because they were there 3 years ago.
Yeah, and I think, like you mentioned, the one thing they have over a lot of these other teams, over Iowa, over Northwestern, over Michigan State, is Jonathan Taylor. I think that's probably the biggest advantage they have if they're trying to get to a higher bowl.
Yep.
Well, that's Tom Oates. You can follow him on Twitter at Tom Oates WSJ, and of course read his stuff as well as mine on madison.com. Thanks for joining me, Tom.
Yep, my pleasure.
How you doing, Deron?
How you doing?
Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
So I know a lot of Coach Leonard's putting a lot of you guys out there, rotating things a lot. Does that kind of help you guys to I guess some people might look at that and say, well, certain players can't get into a rhythm if you're not playing a bunch of snaps, but does it help you at all that you're going to have a chance and that you'll have a lot of you guys will have an opportunity out there?
Yeah, I feel like for me it helps me, especially being on the sideline. I could watch and see what the receivers are doing, how they're attacking our corners and stuff like that. So I feel like that really helps me to be prepared when I go in the game. So.
Do you feel like, how much do you think you've progressed? Obviously, back in the spring you weren't really anywhere near the rotation, and obviously you kind of break out during fall camp, and now you're getting some time. Like, do you feel like you're sort of continuing to progress here? Where do you think you are now compared to maybe the start of the season?
I feel like, especially from the start of the season, I feel like I gained a lot more confidence, from that. Because fall camp, I was extremely confident, and then when I got in the game the first time, I was, really nervous, really jittery. But the more snaps I get, I feel like I get more confident every time. So I gain more confidence.
Dakota's was like the only guy with like a lot of experience in the secondary. How much has he kind of helped you? I know he's a safety or a corner, but does he help you a lot, get you lined up right, and things like that?
Yeah, he does. If it's a call, if it's a formation we're not sure of, he'll give me the call and some of the adjustment. He really just gives me confidence, knowing that he has my back. So I appreciate that from Coda.
I think there was that comeback against Purdue last week. There were so many key plays down the stretch that helped you guys. I feel like a lot of people forget a lot of the plays already just because so much happened.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that people forget is the 2 straight pass breakups you had.
Yeah.
On second and third down. Purdue ends up punting from your guys' 40-yard line with 2 minutes left, and if you don't make those plays, they might just win the game right there in regulation. Did you? What were you kind of seeing on those plays? I know that the second one, I don't know if you thought it was a catch before they reviewed it. But what were you kind of seeing on those plays? Did you feel like they kind of came after you there and you stepped up?
Yeah, I just felt like before both the plays, I'm just saying I'm gonna trust my athletic ability, and they just gonna have to prove to me that they can beat me, and just trusting my ability, trusting what I've been working on all week at practice. So I just felt like I was prepared for that moment.
What were you thinking on the second one? Did you think it was incomplete, or were you not sure until after the review? I was really unsure. I thought he had caught it, to be honest with you, but I felt like it was still a good play. We stopped it short of the first down, so I felt either way it would have been a good outcome. You only got credit for 1 pass breakup.
So I did? I didn't even know that.
It seems like both were breakups.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, it's all right, though. I'm not. We won the game. That's all I care about.
What does that win do for you guys? Because I know people can look at that and say a great win, but obviously the Big Ten West is kind of out of the picture. And in the end, it may not be a super meaningful win as far as the standings and stuff. But to win a game in the manner that you did like that on the road, does that do a lot for sort of the mentality of the team?
Yeah, I feel like it really gave us a confidence boost. Because Purdue, I feel like Purdue's a really good team. They struggled in the beginning of the season, lost their first 3 games, but came back, beat Ohio State, which is a really good team. So I feel like if anything, it gave us a confidence boost. We won on the road and fought hard as a team. Had each other's back. So I feel like that definitely gave us a confidence boost.
You're still, a young guy. I haven't been here that long. Does the Axe mean as much to you as a lot of the guys who are from Wisconsin who have kind of grown up with this rivalry? Did you have some of the older guys or some of the local guys been able to kind of get that in your head, like this is a super important game?
Oh yes, sir. Like the seniors, though, they always talk about the Minnesota game, probably one of the biggest games of the year. Rivalry week. They just tell us how important this game is. So to me, it's really important just to do it for these seniors, that's been putting all this time in and helping us along this walk that we're going through right now. So it's really big for us to win this game. I feel like to do it for the seniors.
Is there a moment for you where you realize okay, this is a bigger game than maybe I thought it was?
I feel like when Alec Ingold had talked to the team about how big the game was, he just told us, growing up in Wisconsin and stuff like that, it's always been a huge game. He watched the game, played in it. It's just, he said, the atmosphere is different, and, you just have to win this game. So I feel like that's the biggest thing.
Was that last year or this week?
This week. Yeah, this was this week.
Who else has anybody else kind of stepped up and talked, or have you had any other speakers come in or anything like that?
Really all this, just really the seniors. The seniors just been talking about how big this game is. I knew, I honestly didn't know coming in to Wisconsin that how big of a game it was. I just knew they were our rival, but seeing, talking to the seniors and everybody, I realized how big this game is. So I feel like we just have to practice hard this week, finish practice off this week, and come out and be ready to play.
All right, thanks, John.
I appreciate it.
That's going to do it for this week. A big thanks to Tom and Deron for coming on. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or Google Play. It's free and it just takes a second. You can follow me on Twitter at Jason_Galloway. We're going to do a live Twitter chat after the Minnesota game on Saturday night, so follow me on there and get an update on when I'm going to go live there on Saturday. And of course, you can submit your questions over the next day or two here for our Mailbag podcast on Friday. So make sure you tweet me those questions. I'll make sure to answer them on the podcast on Friday as well. And of course, keep visiting madison.com for all of your Badgers football coverage. Thanks for listening.